Hey, what's going on, you guys? It's Ace and today I'm bringing you guys the Epic History TV third part to the Apollo program. So this one is actually titled Houston, We've Had a Problem. So many people, they know this as Houston, We've Had a Problem. But that's not the case. It's not we've had a problem. It's not we have a problem. It's we've had a problem. The problem has already happened when they called in, and it's a very famous line from the Apollo 13 mission, where basically they had to slingshot around the moon and come back. We all know about this. They made a movie about it. I'm really excited, and I'm actually really excited they use this in the title, because I believe this one takes off from the Apollo 12. It might actually be from the Apollo 13, and I'm assuming it probably pushes all the way through to the Apollo 17, which I think the Apollo 17 was the last one, right? Anyway, hope you guys like it. If you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that sub button, hit that like button, help me out. I really do appreciate it. And I'm going to sit back, I'm going to shut up, and let's get watching.
(1961), at the height of the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union, cosmonaut Yuri Gagarin became the first man in space.
Let me go ahead and tell you guys right here. Some people were confused last time. They thought that this was because it's the same intro as the other Apollo parts, part 1 and part 2. It is not a misclick. This is a part 3, I promise, as you can see right here.
Just weeks later, the United States launched its first astronaut, Alan Shepard.
There he is.
He was welcomed home as a hero. But President John F. Kennedy knew that if the United States was to overtake the Soviet space program, it needed a bolder mission.
True.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
As Kennedy addressed Congress, the United States had just 15 minutes of human spaceflight experience. No one knew if a moon landing was even possible, let alone in just 9 years. It would be an unprecedented engineering and scientific undertaking, marked by heroism and tragedy. The incredible task of landing an astronaut on the moon would be known as
the Apollo program. Great program. Honestly, what blows me away about the Apollo program is JFK got up and said, by the end of the decade, or by decade's end, whatever he said, we will have a crew or a man go to the moon and return to Earth safely. That's a lot to promise. By the end of the decade, it's 9 years. Like, I don't think you guys understand how stressful that would be. Imagine 1969, they haven't done it yet, and now they're getting ready to do it. Do they push it through even though they're not quite ready? Even though they haven't done the testing they want? Like, what do you do? Or are you actually ready? You know, it's a stressful situation. You don't want JFK to be wrong. You don't want the president to be wrong, be proven wrong. But at the same time, are you really ready? It's definitely a rushed program.
On the 20th of July 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon.
Yep.
But now that President Kennedy's goal had been accomplished, interest in space exploration began to fade. NASA's budget was slashed. There would only be resources for 6 more lunar flights. But in its final chapter, the Apollo program would make its greatest scientific discoveries and face the deadliest perils of spaceflight.
I'm not sure you can get hit by lightning. We got more than a problem.
There it is.
Apollo 11 landed safely, but it completely missed its intended landing site.
Right.
NASA's plans for lunar exploration relied on its ability to land astronauts at precise points of scientific interest. It would be up to Apollo 12 to attempt a pinpoint landing. Apollo 12 would aim to land next to the Surveyor 3 probe, which had been on the moon since 1967. If NASA could hit this precise target, they'd prove that a pinpoint landing was possible.
That's smart.
Apollo 12's crew was Mission Commander Pete Conrad,
Wow,
Command
Jesus
Module Pilot
Christ.
Dick Gordon,
No, check that out. Seriously.
Commander Pete Conrad,
Dude has some blue eyes. Jesus Christ. Like, I've seen blue eyes, but oh my god. It's like the ocean.
Command Module Pilot Dick Gordon, and Lunar Module
Wow.
Pilot Alan Bean. They were a tight-knit crew who drove matching gold Corvettes to work at Kennedy Space Center. Conrad and Gordon had already flown together on Gemini 11,
Okay.
and all three men had been stationed at the United States Naval Test Pilot School at Patuxent River, Maryland. But their mission almost didn't make it into orbit.
6,
As the countdown reached 0, huge thunderclouds loomed overhead.
0. All engines running. Commit. Liftoff.
The colossal Saturn V rocket and its exhaust trail were acting as a gigantic lightning rod.
Jesus Christ, that'd be terrifying.
2 lightning strikes shut down the service module's fuel cells and knocked out the command module's guidance system. But nobody had seen the strikes. All they could see was a barrage of errors and warnings.
I got 3 fuel cell lights, an AC bus light, a fuel cell disconnect, AC bus overload, 1 and 2, main bus A and B out.
Jesus
In Mission
Christ.
Control, Flight Director Jerry Griffin was moments from calling an abort. But a young flight controller named John Aaron was able to interpret the chaotic data and come up with a solution. With no time to explain, he relayed an obscure instruction to the crew.
Apollo 12 Houston, try SCE to auxiliary, over. NCE to auxiliary. SCE to auxiliary.
The command was
Yeah.
so obscure that neither the
See, that's the problem that a lot of people have. They say, oh, yeah, use SCE. It's amazing if you just use the phonetic alphabet. I mean, SCE, what, Sierra, Charlie, Alpha? Or Echo, I mean, sorry, SCE. Sierra, Charlie, Echo. It's so much easier to understand.
flight director or Conrad had any idea what it meant. But in the Lunar Module pilot's seat, Alan Bean understood Aaron's solution. He switched to a set of backup electronics that had escaped the lightning strike, and the mission was back on track.
I'm not sure you can get hit by lightning.
The problem had been diagnosed and fixed within moments. It was a testament to the rigorous training of the astronauts and mission control staff. The crew of Apollo 12 continued their journey to the moon and made a safe landing. When Pete Conrad set foot on the lunar surface, his first words lacked Neil Armstrong's gravitas, but he more than made up for it
What do you say?
with his delight.
May have been a small one for Neil, but that's a long one for me. I'm going to step off the pad. What is that frosting?
As he looked around the landing site, he saw that their mission had been accomplished.
That's what I see sitting on the side of the crater. The old surveyor, yes sir.
That's awesome.
It can't be any further than 600 feet from here. How about that?
Apollo 12 had made its pinpoint landing next to the Surveyor 3 probe. It was located in Oceanus Procellarum, also known as the Ocean of Storms. Now, NASA had sent astronauts to the moon 4 times, including 2 successful landings.
Okay.
But if lunar flight was starting to look routine, the next Apollo mission would be a terrifying reminder of the dangers of spaceflight.
Let's see, NASA will claim that they are absolutely not superstitious, but I bet you my last dollar they'll never name another spacecraft 13. Fair enough. Actually, that's a damn good point. Also, Jim Lovell. Was he one? Oh, okay, yeah, Apollo 13 mission commander. I was going to say, what else was he on? Was he one of the Gemini programs? He was definitely something else, right?
The third lunar landing attempt marked a shift in the Apollo program. Previous missions had largely been test flights of the spacecraft. Apollo 13 would focus on scientific discovery. It would land at the Fra Mauro Highlands, whose ancient terrain could provide insight into the origins of the solar system. Adapting a motto from the US Naval Academy, the mission patch features the words Ex Luna Scientia, from the moon, knowledge.
Okay.
But before the crew of Apollo 13 reached the moon, a disaster would leave them fighting for their lives.
I've got a question. So Scientia means knowledge. Does science, is that the study of knowledge? Because, like, biology. Biology is the study of life. Chemistry is, I guess, the study of chemicals, or study of. My point is, ology, I guess, is the study of, and then bio means life. Chem, I guess, would mean chemical, something like that. So I don't know. My point is science just, is that what it means? I guess is my point.
The mission commander was veteran astronaut Jim Lovell, who had travelled further and spent more time in space than any other astronaut.
Okay.
Between his Gemini 7 flight with
There
Frank
it is,
Borman,
Gemini.
his Gemini 12 flight with Buzz
Oh, wow.
Aldrin, and his trip around the moon on Apollo 8, he'd spent 572 hours in space and travelled almost 7 million miles.
Oh my god.
He was joined by 2 rookie astronauts, Lunar Module pilot Fred Hayes and Command Module pilot Ken Mattingly. But just 2 days before launch, Ken Mattingly was grounded after being exposed to German measles and replaced by
Oh
another
my
astronaut, Jack Swigert.
Can you imagine?
Swigert was considered an excellent pilot, but the last-minute change was a difficult blow for a crew that had trained so intensely together.
This is the crew of Apollo 13. Wish everybody there a nice evening, and we're just about ready to close out our inspection of Aquarius and get back for a pleasant evening at Odyssey.
The Apollo 13 crew had just completed a live TV broadcast on their way to the moon. But it went no further than mission control. With public interest in the Apollo program fading, no US TV network would carry their show.
Really?
As the astronauts packed away their
No
camera
way.
equipment, there were a few housekeeping procedures to take care of.
13, we've got one more item for you when you get a chance. We'd like you to stir up your cryo tank.
The command and service module was powered by 3 fuel cells that generated electricity by mixing hydrogen and oxygen. The oxygen was stored as a very cold liquid in 2 storage tanks. In zero gravity, the temperature and density of the oxygen could become uneven in different areas of the tank, which made it difficult to measure how much was left. The solution was to stir the liquid oxygen with a fan. During a ground test just a few weeks earlier, a heater inside oxygen tank number 2 was accidentally left on, and its interior was baked to over 500 degrees Celsius.
Oh wow.
This damaged the Teflon insulation around the wires leading to the fan, When Jack Swigert turned that fan on, electrical current arced across the wires, starting a fire. The pressure of expanding gas turned the oxygen tank into a bomb.
We filled the your neighborhood. We got more than a problem. Okay, one two pressure. I don't know what it is.
Houston, we've had a problem.
As the staff at Mission Control frantically tried to understand what had happened to the spacecraft, Lovell glanced out of the side window of the command module.
It looks to me as though we are offending something. It's a gas of some sort.
Their second oxygen tank had also been damaged in the blast and was bleeding its contents into space.
Oh my god.
Soon, there would be nothing left for the astronauts to breathe, let alone to generate electricity. There was one chance for survival. Apollo 13's lunar module, Aquarius, had oxygen, fuel, and a descent engine that could be used to put them on a course back to Earth. The crew shut down the command module to preserve its tiny reserve of battery power for re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. And all three of them climbed into the two-person lunar module.
Oh wow. Where'd the third person sit?
Conditions were cramped and bitterly cold. NASA staff worked around the clock to solve countless engineering and navigation problems that put the astronauts' lives in constant danger. One of the most serious problems they faced was stopping the astronauts from being poisoned by their own exhaled carbon dioxide.
True.
The lunar module used round canisters of lithium hydroxide to filter carbon dioxide from the air. But there were only enough of these canisters to support 2 astronauts for 2 days. The command module used a similar system, but those canisters were square-shaped. Fortunately, to provide an emergency backup, NASA had developed a procedure during preparation for Apollo 8 to build an air purifier using a lithium hydroxide canister and items found in the spacecraft. The makeshift device was made of cardboard, tape, and an astronaut's sock. But it worked perfectly and removed the poisonous carbon dioxide from the cabin's atmosphere.
Really?
Having survived the flight back to Earth, the crew faced re-entry into the Earth's atmosphere. They climbed back into the command module and jettisoned Aquarius, which wouldn't survive re-entry.
Right, okay.
We got the event, Mike. Farewell, Aquarius, and we thank you.
The command module had been powered down and left in freezing conditions for days. Its heat shield might have been cracked when the oxygen tank exploded, or its parachutes might have frozen solid.
True.
The astronauts were expected to be out of contact with Houston for 4 minutes during re-entry. But 4 minutes passed, and then 5, with no word from the crew. But after 6 agonizing minutes,
Oh my god.
Odyssey reappeared. The astronauts had survived. Apollo 13 failed to land on the moon, but against all the odds and through incredible determination and ingenuity, NASA brought Lovell, Hayes and Swigert home safely.
That being said, it also probably sparked public interest again.
The mission became known as the successful failure. Apollo 14 would see the unlikely return of one of America's original space heroes,
Which one?
Alan Shepard.
Okay. Really? I didn't know that.
Launching aboard a tiny one-person capsule, Shepard became the first American in space in May 1961.
Oxygen, go!
All systems are go.
He was due to command the first mission of Project Gemini, but he began experiencing bouts of extreme dizziness and nausea. He was diagnosed with Meniere's disease, a disorder of the inner ear. There was no known cure, and it seemed he would never be assigned to another spaceflight. Shepard was appointed Chief of the Astronaut Office, overseeing crew training and mission planning. Outside of NASA, he also made a small fortune investing in real estate, banking, and oil drilling.
Okay.
But he was determined to fly in space again. In the summer of 1968, he underwent an experimental and risky surgical procedure to correct his disorder. Now, Shepard would return as the commander of Apollo 14. But Shepard's
He's
struggles
47 at the time.
continued.
That's kind of old for an
The mission was
astronaut.
almost overcome by glitches on the way to the moon. After launch, the docking mechanism between the command module and lunar module wouldn't engage. Before lunar descent, the computer tried to abort the landing and had to be reprogrammed mid-flight. Finally, the landing radar stopped working just as the crew were approaching the surface. But Shepard had come too far to be stopped by glitches. With the support of Mission Control, he and his crew overcame these problems and made a perfect landing. The closest yet to their target.
How far?
Over the course of 2 moonwalks, Shepard and his lunar module pilot Ed Mitchell ventured further from their lunar module than any previous astronauts.
Oh, wow.
They climbed steep terrain, investigated ancient craters, and gathered more rock and soil samples than Apollo 11 or 12. With his mission objectives completed, Shepard brought out a golf ball that he'd smuggled in the pockets of his
that's
spacesuit.
great.
Using his sampling tool as a club, he teed off next to the lunar module.
Yeah, that's gonna be the longest drive. World record right there. Equipped with his 5 senses, man explores the universe around him and calls the adventure science. I agree. Apollo 15. The upgrade. Oh, did they add the rover for the first time
three
or something?
missions would be the most scientifically productive, and they were equipped with advanced hardware. Their upgraded lunar module had enough supplies to support astronauts for 3 days. New spacesuits and backpacks enabled moonwalks as long as 7 hours.
Wow.
And the new lunar rover allowed astronauts to explore much larger areas of the moon's surface.
Okay.
Meanwhile, the command module pilot conducted extensive surveys of the moon from orbit, using a new suite of cameras and scientific instruments. Dave Scott, on his 3rd spaceflight, would be the commander of Apollo 15.
What were the other two? Oh, Gemini
The
8
crew
and 9.
made one of the biggest geological
Apollo 9,
discoveries
gotcha.
of the program when they unearthed a chunk of anorthosite, a piece of the moon's primordial crust, 4.5 billion years old.
Jesus Christ.
Apollo 16 was commanded by John Young, who had already flown to the moon on Apollo 10. The lunar module pilot was Charlie Duke, and the command module pilot would be Ken Mattingly, who had lost his place on Apollo 13 just days before the launch, and
Right.
was finally getting his chance to fly in space.
That's cool. I'm glad you got his chance for sure.
Young and Duke spent 3 days on the lunar surface, traveling great distances with the aid of the lunar rover. But now, budget cutbacks had brought the Apollo program to an early end. Apollo 17 would be its final flight.
It's a good quote. Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in that cradle forever. I like it. Expansion is necessary, you know?
On December the 7th, 1972, Apollo 17 prepared to depart. It was the only night launch of a Saturn V.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The rocket's blazing exhaust plume lit up the sky at Cape Kennedy.
Also, let me just throw this out there. If you guys haven't been to Kennedy Space Center in Florida, 100% worth it. I haven't been there in years, but it's awesome. Seriously, I love it.
The final mission was commanded by Gene Cernan. His command module pilot was Ron Evans, and the lunar module pilot was Harrison Schmitt. On this final mission, Schmitt represented a first. A professional geologist, he was the only scientist astronaut to walk on the moon.
That actually happened a decent amount later on.
landed at Taurus Littrow, the most geologically complex site yet visited.
So that actually happened a decent amount later on, with scientists on the missions, with like the space shuttles and everything. We wanted scientific exploration, so it's what we did. We sent scientists out there.
Cernan and Schmitt spent a total of 22 hours walking on the moon. They traveled 19 miles across its surface, and they collected more scientific data than any other mission. But after 3 days on the moon, it was time to leave. Cernan and Schmitt would be the last humans to walk on the moon in the 20th century.
How crazy is that?
But as the Apollo program came to an end, NASA was preparing for new adventures in spaceflight. The first US space station, Skylab, would launch in 1973.
Yeah, Skylab.
Aboard an Apollo Saturn V rocket. In 1975, the United States and the Soviet Union flew a joint mission, the Apollo-Soyuz test project. It was the final flight of an Apollo spacecraft, and the symbolic end of the space race. 1981 would see the first flight of the space shuttle. The mission was commanded by Apollo astronaut John Young.
Oh,
and
really?
Ushered in the next era of spaceflight.
That's cool that he was able to captain it.
But for the Apollo program, 1972 was the end of the road.
Yeah. I thought it was 71, but I guess
As
72.
Cernan climbed into the lunar module at the end of the mission, he bade farewell to the moon and shared his hope that humans would soon return.
And as we leave the moon in Taurus Littrow, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return, with peace and in hope for all mankind.
God, that's a cool exit. How did they get that shot? Yo, if somebody knows, let me know how they got that shot on the moon. I mean, was that I don't know. Was that a camera that was sending signals back? Like TV signals, radio signals, or what's going on with that? Goals to land the first woman, and so the Artemis program, I've heard about that. The first person of color on the moon, the first woman on the moon, and developed the technologies for the first crewed missions to Mars. Yeah. Elon Musk and SpaceX are really working hard on that. I know they're working somewhat with NASA, but they're also very independent, and I honest to God believe that that mission, although NASA is attached but not a primary part, will probably be the first crewed mission to Mars. How cool is that, though? I can't wait. Mars is our planet. So the moon was my parents' planet. I mean, and my dad, he was just a little kid when the moon landing happened. He was 9 years old, and he was 12 years old when the last moon landing happened. So I mean, it was a very short time in his life, but that's his thing. I want Mars. I really do. Mars is the future. It's a way of doing things, and I'm beyond excited. I really am. Um, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Till next time, this is Ace Sai, and I'm out.